Welcome to the Conquer Risk Podcast. My name is Manish Kata, and as always, I have Jeff Goodnow here with me. Today, we want to talk about the benefits of a TAMP, which is otherwise known as a Turnkey Asset Management Program. And before we jump in, I think a good way to intro this is sort of a story about how you and I met. We've known each other for a long time. You recently joined Potomac. I guess it's been, 4 or 5 years at this point?
It's almost 5 years, brother.
Almost 5 years. All right, so not recent. That's 4 kids ago or 3 kids ago. And so I think it's a good chance here to tee up this story. And essentially, Potomac has been a single money manager for years, and we've always worked through broker-dealers. And you worked at a broker-dealer, and we reached out to your firm at the time and said, hey, how can we get involved? How can we show your advisors our strategy? And we sort of, got along real well, formed a partnership, and you really liked sort of the strategies we were had in place at the time, and so we started a partnership at that point. And jump into sort of what you did after that, in terms of your role with the managers and how we sort of expanded on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spent years doing due diligence and then also working with advisors to help them grow business by narrowing down the field, right? If you think about the number of managers that are out there, I mean, it's a never-ending process, right? You go down the rabbit hole as an advisor trying to figure out who you're supposed to use. So that really was my process, was to help help advisors combine managers that worked for their business and their clientele and their licensing and their niche and philosophy and all those things. That's great.
And at the time, one thing that we talked about a lot is that we were fans of having managers in different places. We thought that was better than having it all once because of the technology that was limiting each manager to what they can do individually. You remember those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was going to next. It's funny how things change. But my philosophy, my process was, yes, it was better to have managers work with them directly, and you have 3 or 4 managers that cover the primary part of your business, and you worked with each one directly. But that meant each one had its own account process, its own service team, its own etc. Right? But that was the best way to be independent at that time. And it's interesting, right? Times change, tech changes, business changes, and evolution happens. And that's where we're going to talk about today, right? To discuss the benefits of a TAMP, because I know I've done a 180 and I look at things now, and while yes, it is, I think, really valuable. There's some great pros to working directly with a manager, an individual manager. There's with technology and as things have changed, client expectations, because of their day-to-day interaction with their phone or their iPad, etc., right, their expectations have changed. And now that aggregation, that consolidation of having all their managers in one place and having one new account set up, etc., we'll talk about some of these benefits, right? It all becomes easier in a TAMP. And that's, okay. Look, we can yeah, go ahead.
Well, so let's jump into some of those benefits then. We're saying that at one point, having managers in each place was better, but as technology has improved, maybe there's more benefits to a TAMP. So the first thing is, let's talk about prospecting. That's what every financial advisor wants to get new clients and prospect. How does a TAMP help a financial advisor prospect?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts from a prospecting standpoint. It starts with a proposal, right? From a client comes in and they've got $250, $500, $1 million, and look, one manager probably isn't going to do the deal there, right? You may need to have 2 or 3 different iterations to help out, and of course, without having a TAMP where a proposal can be done combining all managers because they have all the data, you're left with saying, well, basically just making a sales pitch like, well, in my experience, this is the best thing to do. And the client just has to sort of blindly trust you. Not that the performance numbers are all that you're looking for, but it's about that overall experience of seeing something physical where everything comes together and it works well. And maybe it smooths the ride out or whatever your pitch is. But having some sort of a proposal, I think, is so much easier and a real benefit today. Because again, people with their phones are used to being more, we're training everybody to be more visual. So it is what it is.
Well, let me give you a great example of that. Two strategies, two different maximum drawdowns. You do 50-50 in each. Off the top of your head, your first thought would be 50% of one max drawdown plus 50% of the other. But
Right.
without actually having the software to combine them, that's wrong. Because if the maximum drawdown happens at different time periods, it's not exactly as simple as combining them. And the reason I bring out that example is to your point, if you're running all these separate proposals from different people, how do you actually know where the benefit is when you combine these? And so in terms of prospecting, to your point, you can show the combination. You can show the fee combination as well in terms of what exactly they're paying for all of their accounts. What are they
Right.
paying you for all of their accounts rather than sort of individual, because there's different tiers for different managers and different breakpoints, and it becomes cumbersome for the advisor to sort of put it all together at the end of the day.
No, that's a great point. We have a great advisor that works with us, and for their office, they use a couple of different managers, and they have their own fee schedule based on the client AUM with them. Right? Forget which managers they're using, and that was something that for 30 years until we figured out a solution. Right? For 30 years, we had our fee structure that told them what they were going to make. And that was very difficult for them, right? Because when the client reached a certain level, they wanted to lower their fee and just have that as a flat fee, and there wasn't an option. So if every manager makes their own business decisions, you, the advisor who's listening, have to abide by each of these different processes rather than, again, the benefit of a TAMP, one place, one fee structure, it's all simplified. And then you can run your business accordingly.
Well, but before we move on then, the one thing that I think is important to bring up is there's always some pushback where people say, well, I use different technology and I integrate everything. And without diving too deep into this dark hole, I think what we've learned is that, surface level, when fintech people are selling you stuff, integrations are great and they sell you the smoke and mirrors. But really, when an advisor dives into it, the integrations simply don't work. You're better off getting 80% of something in an all-in-one solution that works together than trying to piecemeal these different pieces of technology. And we've learned that across the board from advisors we work with, that they sign up for the tools, they put the investment, and then sort of throw their hands in the air out of frustration. And so
Right.
that's another benefit of a TAMP, of a single solution. And so let's move on to the next point here. What else you got?
Yeah, well, so as we sort of round out prospecting, I think it is a real advantage to have what I'll call other solutions at your fingertips. Doesn't mean that you're using them, but the fact that you can, I think is really helpful. So whether it be you have a prospect that suddenly needs their HSA account managed, or they have a 403B that needs managed, or they have a high concentration in a stock position because of the company they work for. They have a special situation. They need tax loss harvesting. All these things are available within a decent TAMP. And great, if you suddenly need it and you never needed it before, it's easy to simply add that to the proposal and know that it's there. With a little bit of work, figure out which manager makes sense. You're not having to change your process, and I think that's key. From an efficiency standpoint, as you try and prospect and meet new people and grow your practice, you're not having to change your process in order to bring on a new prospect that is a little bit different. So it opens up, it keeps your world open as to who you might have as a new client.
Okay.
So it's an efficiency play.
All right. Well, let's talk about client experience then.
Yeah.
What are some key points here?
Yeah, I think once you've actually done your job, right, and you have convinced a prospect to become a client, right, that's where the world changes a little bit, because okay, so now they are on board, and great. Well, what I have spent years and years and years talking about is the aggregation world. And again, a technology change, as more technology changes happen, more technology becomes available, the better this sort of thing is. But clients want all of their information in one place, right? Whether you're doing a financial plan or not, whether or not they have multiple managers, they want all their stuff in one place. So very few clients have one little investment account with you, right? They've got multiple accounts. You're doing a financial plan. You want to aggregate so you can also get not only their different manager investment accounts, but also their bank account and their car loan and their mortgage. And a good TAMP can put those things together for you so that the client experience, which helps you in the long run, the client experience is improved and simplified. And we go back to that word all the time, simplification. So that's the biggest thing I see out of this client experience.
And the second part of client experience is the back office for the advisor and how they deliver that. And forget about the technology for a second. If a client calls you and needs to make some changes, different managers on different platforms likely have different rules. One might need a signature, or one might not. And your staff, in terms of the amount of staffing you need, exponentially grows with the amount of options you have available. And so, for better or for worse, by putting it in one area, there's tremendous sort of cost savings and scale, because your staff is not out there chasing their tail trying to figure out the different rules and regulations. And you brought up a good point about RMDs, which really hits home what I just said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we all have to deal with, and the clients, as they age, have to deal with the RMD. Hopefully, right? And the fact that if you use 3 different managers and you have 3 different IRAs, you have to go, yeah, they're all getting letters and they're all getting information from each one of them, but you, the advisor, have to help them walk through, okay, well, here's your dollar amount you have to take and where do we want to take it from, and go through this extra, okay, well, this time we're going to take it from this manager, so it's this process with this form. There's no way to automate that and say, just pull my RMD out from the account and have it do the calculations for you with all these different managers. So that simplification alone, I think, is worth its weight in gold. And then you multiply that times however many other processes that you're doing one-off with each different manager. These days, it's just not worth it. Not worth it to do them individually. So
what else is going on?
Yeah, so let's hit some things. What things are? Let's change the topic just a little bit. Let me rephrase. You can change the topic just a little bit. And what should you look for in a TAMP? What is it that defines a good TAMP? You want to fire away?
Yeah, I think first, from a technology standpoint and a UI standpoint, we've tested a lot of these systems, and some of them are so bad in terms of they look like a Commodore 64 once you dive in. There's a lot of manual processes behind it. They sell you the sizzle, but there's absolutely no steak at all. And once you dive in, you're uploading CSV files and you're manually downloading statements. So a clean user interface with workflows that don't actually add work to your table. The point of this is to reduce the work, be able to scale. So the technology has to help you and not hurt you. And we've seen a lot of technology software solutions that actually end up, you spend more time than you would before. And so I think that's point number one, is a good technology solution from a user interface and a workflow point of view.
Yeah, so I'll go with to me the biggest thing is a good manager selection, and I need to expand on that. They need to have a good manager selection because, of course, you don't want to just end up with 3 choices, right? You want to have more. The problem is, as we've spoken before, and I've said before, and I made up a word called overwhelmingness. I think that's the feeling that an advisor gets when they see 500 or 1,000 managers. Like, should I look at all these to figure out which ones are the best? So what ends up happening, because it's so overwhelming, the only tool they have is to do a performance filter. And it's a terrible way to figure out what manager you're going to use. So my next statement, in addition to having a good manager selection, should go hand in hand with that is there an OCIO? Is there somebody there to help you as an advisor figure out what your specific needs are, what your clientele are, and what managers work together, how to combine those? Well,
to your point, there's a lot of TAMPs out there that come from a technology background. So they create the TAMP, they create the services, but they don't know what to do with the manager side of the business. And we had a recent client who came from another TAMP that basically had 5 choices. All 5 were more passive strategic, and the advisor was looking for more options, and the TAMP was basically not interested in really going down that path, because a lot of these TAMPs are not money managers. They never were. They're just technology providers who happen to collect different money managers under their umbrella. So they don't really know how to combine. They don't really know what recommendations or how to put people in the right place. So yes, to your point, you do need an OCIO or someone in charge. And I think a lot of these firms, they just don't exist because that's not their cup of tea.
Right. Well, along with the management, this is a little bit more your area. You want to speak to reporting itself? Like
I think the reporting aspect is obviously important, so advisors can see.
It's sort of post the choice. I've chosen these managers. We've got them implemented. Now what?
It's important to see how they're helping each other or how they're hurting each other. If you're going to put managers together, you need to be able to report on them, bill on them separately, so that you can see net of fees who's adding value to the overall pie and who's subtracting. And I don't think that's being done. I think a lot of times you get this performance report and you see that you're up or down, 4 or 5%, but where did that come from? And that's where the further analysis on the reporting side really plays a role in a good client experience, making sure that you can identify the strengths and weaknesses of your portfolio.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think the last point we would say, at least that I have for good things to look for in a TAMP, is really about some of the extras. And, is there financial planning included? Is there, are there other benefits that might be available, like account aggregation? I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the podcast, right? It's, bringing in that bank account or the mortgage or the car. The whole idea here is, are they providing additional tools to make you provide a simplified client experience for both you, the advisor, as well as your end client? So, any other thoughts on that?
I do, actually, because I want to hit on something. It's important to have the financial planning tool live in the same environment as your investments. And currently there's not a lot of folks that do this. A lot of times it's another solution that you have to integrate, and maybe they don't code the investments properly, one's growth, one's income, and it doesn't mesh very well. So I think what's a good benefit is to have these things live together, because if you are going to run a financial plan and the goals are 5, 6, 7%, whatever it may be, you kind of want your investments to the left of that so you can see how you're hitting your goals. And the combination of these things, I think, are going to be hugely beneficial in the future for a good TAMP to deliver services to advisors.
Yeah. Well, all right. So we've spoken about some of the benefits of a TAMP and how it can help your practice and obviously help the end client experience. We've spoken about in other podcasts about some of the negatives of the big TAMPs. I mean, in the scheme of things, we as a small firm, what should we do to solve this need for the benefits of a TAMP and the terrible service that you often get with a TAMP?
The feedback we've received is that people hate working with large TAMPs. And so there's a void of a TAMP that will actually answer the phone, a TAMP where you can actually talk to the OCIO, a TAMP where you can actually call the back office and they'll call you back. And so, I don't know, maybe someone should make that.
Guess I better turn in next week.
Guess we should.
All right, hey, let's move on. I'm going to give you a recommendation for this week because we're running on this podcast. I should get. I'm going to say up front, I should get paid by Netflix, because it seems to be that almost every week I've got to change this up. But that's all I'm watching anymore is originals on Netflix. White Lines is the name of my recommendation for this week. It's the same dude that wrote Money Heist, which is also you can see on Netflix. But White Lines is just an interesting sort of. There's some humor in it. It's a drama. It's just a good flick. Check it out. It's a good series, not a movie. Excuse me. It's a series.
Okay. I have actually a recommendation of what not to do this week, and that is, so I have a bad habit of eating a bowl of cereal at night, after dinner, just because I'm hungry. And so one of these old trainer guys sent me this link. He's like, hey, check out this cereal. It's called Magic Spoon. It's supposed to be like this grain-free cereal, healthy, whatever. And so I ordered it. Of course, it's expensive as all hell. It's $8-9 a box or something. And it had some value pack. And it tasted like absolute shit. It was so bad. I mean, it was like, no matter what flavor, even my kids wouldn't even eat it. I gave them a bowl. I mean, they'll eat anything sweet. And I gave Kaka a bowl, and he looks at me and passes it back to me. And so, my recommendation is to stay away from whatever the hell Magic Spoon is. It was horrendous.
Oh, that's just funny, man. I'm laughing enough. My camera's shaking. I guess I ought to lean away from the desk.
Yeah,
On that note, hey.
Box.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I save the weight if that's the only thing I have to eat. All right. On that note, we're out. We'll catch you next week.
All right. Bye.